Last week, Brendon Small sold a bunch of cool gear on Reverb. I told you I bought one. Here it is. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I think the case pretty much gives that away if you were paying attention. I bought Brendon Small's ugly Les Paul. To quote Strong Bad, the gift of death metal does not smile on the good-looking. If there's any doubt, go ahead and hot glue some cornflakes to your face. And isn't that just a perfect way to describe a bird's eye top? But all right, we're going to learn all about Brendon's old guitar here, get it all conditioned up, cleaned, and get some new strings on. And I've got to say, this looked awful in the Reverb stock photos, but it actually does look pretty nice in person. So let's start off learning about what this is. It's a 2013 Gibson Les Paul Standard. This is actually a really interesting period of time for Gibson because the Standard was actually like the Les Paul Modern in today's aspects, except for we just don't have that extra comfort carve on the back of the heel, but still has the ultra modern weight relief. They have an asymmetrical neck profile carve to them. Pair that with stock locking tuners with fancy electronics down here. So you get your in and out of phase down here as well as your coil splitters. You get to have lots of fun on these. But they also have the really cool hidden spec that not everybody knows of a long neck tenon. That's right. Gibson USA production having a long neck tenon. That spec is typically saved for the custom shop, so that is what makes these quite special. And we'll talk more over on the Workbench. But they made these in so many different iterations. The stock basic option had an MSRP of $3,899. Now that's not the street price, that's MSRP. But they came stock with a AA figured top and were available in the following colors: Heritage Cherry Sunburst, Honey Burst, Tea Burst, Desert Burst, Translucent Amber, and you could also get a gold top. All those colors were also available in left-handed variations. Now, for nearly $1,000 more at an MSRP of $4,699, there's the upgraded tops, which is where Brendon's old guitar falls. There's a figured Koa top, again offered in many of those finishes we were just talking about, a AAA flame maple top upgrade, a AAA quilt maple top. If you want to check one of those out, we documented one nearly a year ago, and today's AAA bird's eye top. And if you're not familiar with what a bird's eye top is, let me fill you in. Do you see all those little blisters in the top right there? That is what people refer to as bird's eye. Sometimes they're big, a lot of times they're small like this, but if you really zoom in and get into focus, it kind of looks like a small bird's eye. Now, Gibson doesn't use bird's eye very often. You typically find them in the metal chuggy chug guitars as well as like spalted maples. But as far as I'm aware, it's the 90s when Gibson started to use bird's eye tops on occasional special runs. We've documented some in the past. But if none of those were good enough for you, they also had a quadruple A flame, but all those gradings are fairly subjective. They're all going to be pretty nice guitars. So clearly, quite a bit of cool stuff going on just with a 2013 Standard in general. But if you're curious, did Brendon use this on anything in particular? Not according to the Reverb listing. I mean, overall, this thing appears to be in good shape. You can definitely tell it was sitting on a rack somewhere. I mean, look at all the built-up dust all around our neck pocket, as well as our headstock. So it must have just been something he thought was cool. But one of the main reasons why I purchased this guitar was actually for the case. Because if you noticed earlier, it's a Gibson USA, but it's a slash case. Back when they used to put the Scully logo on here, as well as the face of the headstock. And that was cool to me because whenever I think about Brendon Small, this video plays in my head when he's playing Thunder Horse on an AFD/Les Paul. So maybe, just maybe, this is the original case to that guitar. I don't know. There's no proof behind that, but that was worth buying it for me. I saw a whole bunch of paperwork in here, and I'm curious, does it match this guitar, 2013? No, 2006. So this is the paperwork to a different guitar of his. Is anybody familiar with that model? LPS likely stands for Les Paul Standard. BH, I think Buckethead, but that can't be right. So it's the BHE I'm uncertain of. CH is Chrome Hardware. But whatever it is, it's not for this guitar, which means this unfilled out warranty doesn't really help us. Well, in fact, you shouldn't have both of these in one case because that's the same thing. So maybe this just got put in here from a different guitar. This might actually belong to that guitar. Because you got to remember, he was probably part of Gibson's artist program so he could like buy discounted guitars. I would imagine that's how he got this, but even looking at that, this doesn't go to this guitar either. I'm pretty sure this strap lock set, I mean, it could have been added from anywhere, but I believe the Slash Les Paul's actually left with those. And then we've got an owner's manual. So that's fun. But all the guitars sold in this came with a special signed COA, so let's see what that's about. It comes in a special manila envelope and looks like this. COA, Brendon Small of Dethklok. It's got our date there, 2025. Les Paul Standard Bird's Eye Maple with our serial. Aw, cool. I was hoping it was an actual signature and not just a printed one. And you've got Reverb's embossing over there. I thought it was weird that they gave me 4 copies of it, but no, they just combined all my orders into one. So I'm actually really glad I happened to open this one first, because yeah, I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag. I bought more than one guitar from this. We'll review the second guitar shortly, but I thought this one, it's cool, right? But this I can talk about just on its own specs for days. These two, don't get too excited about. So cool, isn't that a lot of fun? Let's continue that by throwing this onto the workbench, taking an in-depth, detailed look at the parts and specs, and then I can attempt to play some Dethklok. I regret ever calling this guitar ugly. It is quite beautiful when you have it in person, because that's the great thing about Bird's Eye is usually it's not just your little pimples, it's also mixed with a little bit of a flame pattern underneath it. And this one, I definitely agree with it being at least a AAA top in the Bird's Eye category, just depending on your lighting situation. Let's go ahead and see. Did he mess with the pickups at all? Well, it's a Rhythm Pro burst bucker in the neck, dated to 2013, and a matching Lead Pro in the bridge. So no, this is the stock pickup set for this model. But here you go, neck pickup cavity. I told you to be expecting that. It's a long neck tenon on a Gibson USA. Marked TS for T-burst. So that means this one is technically the exact same color as that last quilt one that we had documented, just with a different top. But here we can see where that maple block caps off our truss rod, and the joining of the top to the neck. It's not too uncommon to find small gaps like that. But now the bridge pickup cavity, LPS for Les Paul Standard, AB. I'm assuming that means AAA top Bird's Eye, because the last quilt one was AQ. As far as the routes, fairly clean, just a little bit of roughness. But what I find really interesting about this one is it's a 2-piece mahogany body, and you can clearly see the seam line right there. It almost never matches up with the top like that. There's definitely someone OCD working that day. That's funny. I've never seen that. And sometimes it's just because the mahogany joining just looks so similar in our cavities after it's been routed, but these have significantly different colors. But here's a look at the exterior of our pickup covers after cleaning. And hey, if you're upset with me that I cleaned Brendon's X guitar, don't worry. I saved all the death funk that you could ever want, just in case a future owner wants to get freaky with it. I also saved the Brendon strings. And there's not 1, but 2 bags of cornflakes included. I felt it was only right for a Dethklok guitar. But our pickups within the circuit read 8.1 k ohms in the bridge, neck position a little less at 757, and they play together at a little under 4. Now I gotta remember, as I was telling you earlier, we got fancy electronics here. So since we've pulled up on those and we do not get a change in the circuit, that means those are technically coil taps within Gibson. So they're going to be utilizing a capacitor, but we talked all about that in this episode if you want to learn more. So coil taps, real taps, not splits. And this one is acting like a direct bridge. It takes everything out of the circuit and get you, no matter where this is at, if this is on the neck, doesn't matter, still the bridge pickup. If your regular setup has the bridge rolled down to like 5, doesn't matter. It goes straight to the bridge pickup wide open. And then this guy, yeah, he's going to be in and out of phase for your middle position only if you want those quacky Peter Green-like tones. But the other controls for our knobs is just your regular stuff. 2 volumes, 2 tones. Do the knobs look cheap in this era? Yes. However, that's just how they are. They're very prone to cracking. This one is no exception to that rule. There's some internal cracks. Even the bridge is pretty fancy on this model. If I remember correctly, they got titanium saddles or something else special. That's why they look a little bit different. But on top of that, this is a locking bridge. So you see these set screws on the side. Once you have it set up the way you want, you lock those down into place, and then this thing does not leave the guitar. So if you're ever cleaning in between string changes, your setup stays solid. These thumb wheels don't move. Alternatively, there's other guys that say a non-moving bridge gives you better sustain. These are Tone Pro parts. The same thing is true for our tailpiece. Its set screws are on the edges over here. But you'll notice these premium tops did not have a pick guard installed from the factory. That's because, hey, we're utilizing this beautiful wood. You're paying like $1,000 premium. You might as well get to see it. I think my favorite area on this guitar is right over here. You've got these nasty bear claw gashes in it. In general, this side of the guitar is just much better if you like the whole bird's eye phenomenon. Whereas this one's good too. You just gotta look at it like this, and then everything comes into play. This one has a large varying degree of movement to it. The money shot is like right here, where you can see both pieces to its full potential. As far as condition, when I really started cleaning this, I noticed all the wear. There is a few dings right here, and some of that really is just lacquer sink into the bird's eye, but that one that I showed you earlier is actually a ding from some situation. But moving on from our two-piece maple top, two-piece mahogany body with the ultra-modern weight relief, we can talk about our asymmetrical neck and our fretboard. I know what you're thinking. Is that even the same guitar? Yeah, this thing was in desperate need of a fretboard conditioning. It was so dry, some of these inlays were popping out. This one's still sticking out a little bit, but it should be okay. Otherwise, it's typical 2010s Gibson. You've got some tooling marks, and that's just how they ship them from the factory even yet today. So if you get an artist like Brendon, who these are tools of the trade, he doesn't baby all of his instruments. If you never condition it from the factory, it will look like that in like 10 years. I measure a 1.69 inch nut width, increasing to 2.08 by the 12th, with a 0.8 first fret neck depth, increasing to 0.86 by the 12th. Now, if you've never had an asymmetrical Gibson neck from this time period, what on earth does that mean? It means they have a little bit of a bump / shoulder over here on the bass side, but they carve that away on the treble side, so it's not a completely uniform neck. In theory, it makes chords and soloing more comfortable all on one neck profile. Here that is at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. You can kind of see that shape. But not only do we have that, we have a compound radius fretboard. So it ends at 14, starts at about 10-ish. So here's those two compared. It starts off more rounded and then gets gradually flatter. Again, that's to make solos easier. When I said the Les Paul Standard of 2013 was the Les Paul Modern of current day, that's what I meant, because they put all the fancy specs on the Standard and let the traditional be. But what's kind of funny to me is the case is actually marked traditional LP, so maybe he actually had a traditional in here at one point in time. But thought I'd bring it up just in case that confuses someone one day. But this was another fun thing. Since this likely sat on a whole rack of guitars for a long time, it's seen sunlight, maybe even some smoke. Like, if you're curious, is he a big smoker? Does this smell like weed or something? No, it's actually just, normal Gibson guitar. But you can tell that the clear coat is starting to age ever so slightly, because you've got some yellow over that Gibson logo now. Otherwise, just our Les Paul model silkscreen and our locking Grover tuners. But another fun thing, that this was within a rack of guitars and he's doing loud, boomy, chug stuff. All the tuners were like pretty much not even on this thing anymore. And how that happens is the big vibrations from amps and whatnot slowly loosen all screws and washers and nuts. So I went ahead and resecured those for better tuning stability today. And here's a look at our standard truss rod cover, reading as such. And now we can move on to the backside. I really love this wood grain pattern right there. That looks great with that dark cherry coloring. As far as the other side of the two-piece mahogany body, not that great. So that's funny. Best back is matched with the best top. It even has an interesting mineral streak line right over here. As far as condition, there's like a small line impression of something that I was unable to polish off. And then some minor buckle worming over here, but nothing too crazy outside of a few other small pin-sized dings and general light wear and tear. But as far as our electronics today, this was kind of an interesting transitional era when they were switching the push-pull pot styles. So this one just happens to have both of them, which is kind of strange because they feel different. This style is a much faster knob. whereas these are a little bit slower. Maybe that was intentional because you want your tones faster. I don't know. But those pickups are on a quick connect system here. That's why you got the PCB on the bottom. Otherwise, we've got our output jack over here, strap button up here. And don't ask me why, but these 2013s have very strange strap button placements on the top. This one's not as bad as that other 2013 we did, but it's still way farther over than usual because it's normally like right here. And I checked their serial numbers to see, oh, were these really close? But no, they're like months apart. So that just must be another strange thing about these. Here you can see inside our toggle switch cavity, as well as our thin binding in the cutaway and the rest of this edge. Now this is worth mentioning. After cleaning off that dust, there is a little bit of finish breaking around the neck. Now, do I think it's nefarious? No, but this might have received like a jolt at some point in its life. I don't think it'll ever cause issues, just something to be aware of. Now we can move up the back side of the neck. I only noticed like a few mild impressions, not enough to really even be able to show you anything. I thought this was interesting. No cracking along our fretboard. So that tells me he probably has some sort of a humidification control within his studio, because usually you'll get those fretboard cracks really quickly after purchase if you don't have perfect setup. That also helps explain why we didn't get any cracking within our fretboard despite not being conditioned. But now up to the back side of the headstock. Locking Grover tuners. They've got these wheels on the back. That's how you lock the strings in place and loosen them to change them. And our serial number dates it to 2013, 232nd day of the year. Initial batch production number 386. Made in USA 2013, right before they switched back into that whole year production number sequence. Oh, and yes, we do have a mild lacquer rub-through area over there. I forgot to mention this earlier too. There's a small ding at the corner of the top of the headstock. There's also some pretty heavy picking marks right here in the clear coat, I noticed. You really have to get that in the light and in certain situations to notice that though. But I would say that's the heaviest amount of wear on the guitar. Must have been a metal pick or something. But to complete our forensic analysis of Brendon's old guitar, let's go ahead and do our blacklight test. So far, so good. I don't see any evidence of him using this as a weapon at any time. Just a nice, slightly yellow tint to the lacquer. Like, we noticed it on the headstock, but it's hard to tell when you have a colored finish, but you can definitely tell this had got some sun along that stand. I thought this was pretty cool. We've got evidence of him having a clip-on tuner over top of the Gib in Gibson for probably quite an extended period of time. We're lucky that it was a semi-wet nitro-safe one, so it didn't just completely yellow only that area, because that will happen from time to time. But that was cool. I'm not sure if I see a matching counterpart to that, so possible he also could have just had a sticker on that shaded it, and he removed it at some point. Maybe Brendon can chime in if he ever sees this video. Otherwise, I was kind of expecting some stand rash, but he must have, well, granted, he's got a lot of Gibsons and high-end guitar. I'd imagine he's got some nice stands, but you know what? Now that I look at it over here, sure enough, we do have a little bit of stand rash. It's just a little harder to see there. However, I really don't know. That might have been at the factory when they were buffing in just the headstock areas. I don't think we have a headstock repair. I can't see one anyway. But sure enough, we do have a bit of clear coat wear on the neck. I'm glad I decided to do this. We'll definitely do the neck area. That looks good to me. We also have some minor L marks back here. Could be a stand, could be something taped to it. Also notice some minor clear coat rub through over here. Maybe it was played a little bit more than first expected. But all said and done, without strings, it's 9 pounds, 3.6 ounces, with a pack thrown on there, about 9 pounds, 5 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. About you guys, but I had some fun with that. I had a lot of guys on the Reverb episode saying, who's Brendon Small? Never heard of the guy. If you've watched my show, every time I play this riff, I always get comments about it. That is Thunder Horse, the legendary song. That cool little haunting riff. That's Sky Hunter. That other little hammer-on riff, that's something I learned just for this video. It's called the hammer. So I'm not gonna lie and say Dethklok is for everyone. It's basically just a parody metal band, but Brendon has such haunting lead tones. Like, whether you're like the growly vocals and whatnot, I mean, I'll leave that up to you, but you cannot deny he's got such a lead sound to him, and I love all those songs where he explores that. But also keep in mind, most Dethklok songs are in C standards, so this is just regular old tuning. But maybe next time I'll have something that can help us with that. What happened to my bridge pickup? There we go. Must have just been a dirty switch. Let's go ahead and toy around with these taps. They usually sound better in the clean position because they're trying to go for that P90 tone. They're very bright and attacking. I think I'll stick with the full humbucking mode personally. Now the whole direct to bridge. Wow, that's weird. That's the first time I've actually heard it on the clean channel before. Let's try that with a bit of dirt too. Then of course add a phase. I'm sorry, this doesn't appear to have out of phase. What on earth? Now it's working? Must have been some dirt built up in that pot or something. So there we go, Brendon Small's old Les Paul Bird's Eye Standard. What are my final thoughts? I mean, obviously, it's a lot of fun to have one of his old guitars, even if this one was made slightly after some of the more iconic songs in his discography. But hey, that's still fun to have a piece of his history. But I've become a huge fan of 2012 to 2013 Les Paul Standards. They're just so interesting. It's got a lot of the modern specs, but with the traditional looks, and you've got so many choices with colors and what kinds of tops you get, and the long neck tenon is something I've come to appreciate. Now, as far as the compound fretboard radius and asymmetrical neck, I mean, that's up to you whether you love it or not. For me, I don't really notice it that much, but I do find playing these to be a lot of fun. Now, if you're interested in being the next owner of this one, I did not buy any of these Brendon Smalls thinking resale in mind, because after I sold my last quilty one, I was like, you know what, I kind of do need one of these in my collection, just in the museum. So having one with a little bit of a story is cool, but the other one I bought is even cooler. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and stay tuned for the next Brendon Small unboxing. Guitar, that is. All right, take care.